Most stories from the frontier start with gunfire, the death rattle of a horse, or a man pushed to his limit. Tessa Hayes' story began in the dust, standing over a cedar trunk that had sat untouched since the day her parents were buried in the hard Wyoming earth. She hadn't meant to open it. The trunk had always belonged to her father, a man the town remembered as strong and steady, the type who worked from sunup to sundown and kept his sorrows hidden deep. But grief changes a home. After his passing, the house felt colder, quieter. On a still afternoon, Tessa Hayes found herself standing over that cedar trunk lantern, in hand, her chest aching with restlessness. Inside was a wool blanket, a rusted branding iron, and beneath them, a small worn ledger bound in cracked brown leather. She should have walked away. Instead, she opened it. The first few pages were mundane notes about horse sales rising, feed costs, taxes on the Hayes ranch. But deeper into the ledger, the handwriting grew darker, sharper, so deep that the ink nearly cut into the paper. These pages were her older brother, Cole Carter's. Tessa felt her scalp tighten as she read the sketches. A narrow canyon, its ridgeline drawn with unnerving precision. Notes scribbled in Cole's spidery hand. Gold vein thick as a man's wrist. Supplies rifles. Apache land must be cleared. Her breath hitched. She flipped the page and found dates, ammo counts, and a rough plan for a night raid that would wipe out the Apache settlement that had lived in that canyon long before the Hayes family ever settled in the West. Tessa closed her eyes, feeling the floor beneath her shift. The Apache weren't monsters. She knew that. No one in the frontier was. She'd traded herbs, exchanged a ribbon once with a shy Apache girl at the local post. They weren't enemies, they were people, and her brother was planning their slaughter. She kept reading against her better judgment, the nausea building in her throat. The next page nearly made her drop the ledger, a note from Cole. They killed Ma and Pa. I'll make them choke on that debt. Tessa's hand shook. This was the story Cole had told their entire childhood, a bitter tale spoken through clenched teeth after nights when whiskey sharpened his grief into rage. But Tessa had always sensed something was wrong. Their father had been found near an old mine shaft, their mother beside him, no signs of Apache weapons or horses. The sheriff had whispered of claim jumpers, smugglers, a dispute gone wrong. Cole never listened. He needed an enemy, and he'd found one. Just then the back door slammed. Tessa stiffened. The heavy boots of Cole crossed the kitchen floor with the impatience she knew too well. Cole always walked like the world owed him something. He appeared in the doorway of the storage room, his eyes narrowing as soon as he saw the ledger in her hands. "What are you doing?" His voice was low, tight. "That trunk ain't yours." Tessa swallowed the dry lump in her throat. Why Cole? Why rifles? Why Wade Thorne? Why attack the Apache? His jaw tightened. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he stepped toward her, the room feeling smaller with each of his strides. "You weren't supposed to see that. Answer me. They're the reason Ma and Pa are dead," he spat. "You think I'm just going to sit on my hands while those savages take what's ours? That gold should have fed our family for generations." Gold. Tessa stared at him. "You're murdering an entire people for a vein of gold." Cole's eyes flared, and there it was, the sickness she'd feared finally showing its face. "You still don't get it, do you?" he hissed. "Everything we lost, our land, our parents, our future, it all traces back to them. And if you'd stop being so damn soft, you'd see it too." "No," she whispered. "I see something else." She held up the ledger. "I see the truth. And this." She shook the book. "This is wrong." Cole's face hardened. "Wade warned me you were a weak link." Before Tessa could step back, he lunged. The ledger hit the floor. Tessa's arm struck the wall. In one sharp motion, Cole grabbed her wrists, his grip as merciless as iron shackles. "You want the truth," he growled inches from her face. "Fine. Truth is, you know too damn much now." Terror ripped through her, but she refused to cry. refused to give him that satisfaction. "Cole," she said shakily, "don't do this." But he had already made up his mind. He dragged her outside into the fading heat of late afternoon, threw her onto his horse like a sack of grain, and rode hard into the desert. The world blurred past sandbrush, distant ridges swallowed in heat haze, until he halted beside a sun-baked cottonwood, standing alone in miles of emptiness. He tied her to its trunk with the same rope used for stubborn cattle, the fibers biting into her skin. "Maybe the sun will teach you something," he said, climbing back onto his horse, about loyalty blood, about choosing family. Tessa Hayes glared at him, the wind lifting her hair. "Family doesn't do this." Cole's eyes flickered with doubt for a second, but then turned cold again. "You'll thank me in the afterlife." He spurred his horse and left her alone in the desert. Tessa watched him disappear into the red glow of sundown, her breath shuddering, heart pounding. Even as fear wrapped around her like the encroaching night, one truth held her upright. She might die out here, but she would not carry a lie into death. Not her brother's lie, not any of it, though. The desert night had a way of testing a person, pulling heat from the body, draining hope from the soul. Tessa had never known how cold the sand could be after sundown. By the time the moon rose over the ridge, her lips were cracked and her wrists raw where the rope had bitten through her skin. She twisted and fought against the ropes until her arms went numb, but the knots Cole had tied were as tight as the ones used on wild horses, merciless and patient. Hours passed. The wind rose and fell like the slow breathing of some ancient beast beneath the earth. Somewhere far off, a coyote howled a lonely cry that made her spine tighten. She was barely awake when the sound of hoofbeats brushed the edge of the night. Not Cole's. She knew his horse's rhythm, hard, angry like the man himself. These hoofbeats were different, measured, soft, careful. Tessa held her breath. From the darkness a rider appeared, his horse moving with the sure-footed certainty of someone born to the land. Moonlight cut across his cheekbones, catching the black braids that fell past his shoulders. Even before he spoke, Tessa knew he was Apache. For a moment he didn't move, just watched her with eyes as dark as cooled obsidian. No hate, no triumph, just quiet, like he was weighing the truth of what lay before him. When he dismounted, he moved with purpose, as fluid as water. He crouched near her, his expression unreadable. "You shouldn't be alive," he said softly, his voice low and steady. His English carried the cadence of someone who'd learned it by listening, not in a classroom. The desert doesn't spare many. Tessa tried to speak, but her throat held no words, only a rasp of air. The man reached into a pouch tied to his belt, pulling out a small goat-hide flask. He gently lifted Tessa's chin and brought the flask to her lips. "Slow," he murmured. "Drink too fast, and you'll get sick." The first drop of water hit her tongue like mercy. She gasped, and he steadied the flask. Only when she nodded did he give her another sip, then a third. "Better," he said. His gaze shifted to the rope tied around her wrists. His brows furrowed in a look she didn't fully understand. Anger maybe, but not at her. Something else, something like disbelief. "Your people did this?" Tessa's voice cracked. "Yes." Why, he asked, his voice soft but full of weight. She swallowed painfully. "Because I know the truth." That seemed to mean something to him. Though she couldn't tell what, he drew a knife from his boot, a bone-handled blade polished smooth with years of use, and sliced through the rope. Tessa sagged her legs, giving out, but he caught her under the arms before she hit the ground. For a moment she rested against him, too drained to stand. He smelled faintly of smoke and juniper, a scent that made her think of canyon winds and hidden springs. "You can't stay here," he said. "Not another hour." She blinked up at him. Who are you, Sam?" he replied simply. "Sam Blackwood." She knew that name. Everyone within 100 miles did. The youngest Apache to ever be named tribal leader. A man said to read the land like scripture and fight like he was born from the bones of the earth. He helped her onto his horse, tying a blanket across the saddle so she wouldn't scrape her skin. As he lifted her onto the horse, a branch snapped in the dark. Another sound followed the unmistakable metallic click of a rifle being cocked. Tessa stiffened. Sam's hand went to the knife still sheathed at his hip. From the shadows, a familiar voice cut through the night, sharp with triumphant poison. "There you are, Cole." 4 men flanked him. Rifles raised the lantern light, turning their faces into ghostly shadows. When Cole stepped into full view, his eyes burned with something wild, part rage, part desperation. "Get your hands off my sister," he snarled. "You Apache bastard!" Sam didn't rise to the insult. He didn't move at all except to shift slightly, so he stood between Tessa and the rifles, aimed her way. Tessa's heart thudded painfully. Cole stopped. "Please, it's over." Over. Cole barked out a laugh. "You think riding off with one of them makes this over? You're coming home." "No," Tessa said quietly, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. "I'm not." Cole's face twisted in disbelief. "They've turned you already. Poisoned your mind. I knew it." Jace Blackwood spoke, then his voice calm but steady. "She needs water. Medicine. If you take her back now, she will die." Cole raised his rifle. "Not your concern." Jace's body tensed, shifting like a man preparing to strike or shield someone. Tessa Hayes grabbed his sleeve. "Don't," she whispered. "Please, Jace, don't fight them." Cole sneered. "Look at that. She's protecting him." Jace didn't take his eyes off Cole. "I do not wish for blood tonight." "Well," Cole said, lifting his rifle to his shoulder. "I do. The moment right before a gunshot is a strange thing. Silent. Stretching thin. It's like the world holds its breath." Tessa felt it now, a pause that made her skin prickle. Then she made her choice. She pushed herself upright in the saddle, fingers curling around the horse's mane to steady herself. When she spoke, her voice cracked but carried. "I'm not going with you, Cole." Her brother froze. "You don't get to choose. I already did." She looked at Jace. "I'm going with him." Jace's eyes flicked to hers, surprise questioning but steady. Cole's expression shattered, fury carving deep lines across his face. "You ungrateful little—" He swung his rifle toward her. Jace moved before the thought fully formed. He shoved Tessa and the horse sideways, putting his own body between her and the rifle's barrel. The gun roared. The muzzle flashed, lighting the night. The bullet tore through Jace's jacket, grazing his shoulder. Chaos broke loose. Jace grabbed Tessa's reins with one hand and vaulted onto the horse behind her in a single fluid motion. "Hold on," he commanded. He kicked the horse hard, hooves biting into the sand. Rocks flew. Gunfire split the night as they tore across the desert, weaving through dark brush and scattered boulders. Cole shouted for his men to follow, but Jace took a path only someone born to that land would know, down a narrow wash between 2 leaning cliffs across a dry riverbed that looked deadly, but held steady footing. The riders behind them fell away, cursing, stumbling in the dark. Tessa felt her breath come back to her in ragged gulps. Jace's arm was wrapped firm around her waist, keeping her upright. "You are safe," he said into her ear, his voice rough but certain. For now. Behind them, Cole's fury echoed across the land. Ahead of them, the land of the Apache waited, dangerous, distrustful, and the only place Tessa had left to go. Pressed against Jace's heartbeat, Tessa understood. Her life had changed a direction tonight, and there was no road back. Dawn crept over the desert like a slow-burning fire, painting the mesas in shades of red and copper. Tessa had drifted in and out of consciousness through the night, leaning against Jace's steady frame as his horse carried them deeper into country. No map in her father's trunk had ever dared to mark this place. Her wrists throbbed where Cole's rope had bitten through her skin. Her throat felt raw from dust and fear. But she was alive, and for now alive, men staying close to the man who had risked everything to save her. Jace slowed his horse at the crest of a ridge. Below them, cupped between stone bluffs, shaped by centuries of wind, lay a hidden Apache, a settlement lodges of tanned hide smoke drifting gently from morning fires, horses grazing near the creek that wound like a silver thread through the valley floor. Tessa had expected something harsher, more forbidding. Instead, the place radiated a quiet resilience, a sense of belonging woven into earth and sky. She had never seen a home look so rooted. Jace dismounted first. He placed a steadying hand on her waist and helped her down. Tessa's legs buckled, but he caught her easily before she fell. "You will walk," he said, gently, slowly. "The healer cannot treat you if you faint in the dirt." They had barely taken 2 steps when a shout split the morning. Half a dozen Apache warriors emerged from between the lodges, bows drawn braids, snapping in the wind like warnings. Their eyes went from Jace to Tessa and hardened instantly. A tall warrior stepped forward, his face painted in red ochre. "Jace," he barked. "What is this? Why bring her here?" Jace didn't let go of her arm. She was left to die by her own. "I couldn't leave her. That is not our concern," the warrior growled. "The white folk bring death, always death." Another voice joined them, older, sharper. "What sickness do you carry home, Jace?" The crowd parted for Zara, the tribe's medicine woman. Her long gray hair was bound with bits of turquoise. Her eyes were bright as hawk feathers. She looked Tessa up and down her torn dress, her cracked lips, the rope burns, still bleeding. Zara didn't hide her disdain. "Trouble," she pronounced, wrapped in harsh skin. Tessa Hayes lowered her gaze, knowing she was the reason the hostility rippled through the camp. Jace Blackwood stepped in front of her, his voice calm but firm. "She knows something important, something that could kill us." The warriors murmured restlessly. Zara crossed her arms. "Speak then, white girl. Why should the people of this valley give you breath?" Tessa tried to swallow, but her throat was dry, a lump forming. She forced the words out anyway. "Your people, your land, it's in danger, from who a young warrior demanded, your kind." She nodded painfully. "My brother and a gunrunner named Wade Thorne. They want the gold in your canyon. They're planning an attack soon." A ripple of anger surged through the crowd, sharp and immediate. Zara turned to Jace. "You trust the words of a Carter." "I trust what I saw," Jace said firmly. "Cole tied her to a tree and left her for the sun." "Why kill one of their own? To hide me," Tessa whispered. "To hide the truth." For several heartbeats, no one spoke. Then Zara snapped her fingers at 2 young women standing near a lodge. "Bring her to my tent," she ordered. "I will treat her wounds." "But hear me, Jace Blackwood," she added, her voice low but sharp. "If she brings danger into our home, the blood will fall on your hands." Jace met her gaze. "I accept that." Zara's eyes softened slightly at that, and she nodded curtly. As the women led Tessa toward the healer's lodge, the warriors dispersed, still grumbling. Jace watched her go, jaw clenched in a storm no one else could see. He had brought her into a nest of tension, and whether she lived or died might depend on every breath she took from here on. Inside Zara's lodge, the air smelled of sage smoke and crushed juniper. The medicine woman cleaned Tessa's wrists with warm water, muttering under her breath in Apache. The words were sharp but not unkind. "You fought the rope," Zara observed. "Good. Fighting means living." "It wasn't courage," Tessa murmured. "Just fear. Sometimes they are the same." Zara wrapped Tessa's wrists with soft strips of elk hide, smearing them with a soothing salve. "There," she said. "You will mend, but you must be careful. Many here hate the sight of you." "I understand," Tessa whispered, feeling the weight of those words. Zara paused, her voice dropping low. "Do you? Truly? Your people took much from us. Lives, children, land. A wound doesn't heal just because someone says sorry." Tessa met the woman's eyes. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, just the chance to do what's right." The words hung in the air like smoke. Zara studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You might have a spirit worth saving, she said softly. We will see. By evening, Jace returned to check on her. Tessa was sitting on a woven mat, her wrists bandaged, exhaustion weighing her down. But when he entered, her eyes lifted and something in his chest tightened unexpectedly. How are you feeling? He asked. Tired, she said honestly, but alive, because of you. He shook his head. Because the desert chose not to take you. A soft silence settled between them. Outside the village hummed with quiet life, children laughing by the creek. Elders talking by the fire warriors, sharpening arrows as dusk folded into night. Jace finally spoke. The council needs you tomorrow. They will decide what to do with you. Tessa swallowed. And what do you want them to do? He hesitated, a rare thing for him. I want the truth. He said, his voice serious. If your brother and this Wade Thorn truly plan to attack, we must prepare. Then softer, and I want you safe. Tessa felt warmth flicker beneath her ribs. She tried to hide it, but Jace saw everything with those dark, steady eyes. I don't want to be a burden, she whispered. You are not, he said. But danger follows you like a hungry dog. The people see it. They think you will bring death through our gates. Tessa lowered her gaze. Maybe they're right. No, Jace's voice deepened. Death is coming whether you are here or not. You only revealed its path. She looked at him, not as a stranger, not as a rescuer, but as a man carrying a whole tribe's hopes on his shoulders. Something fragile and frightening passed between them. Jace straightened. Rest. Tomorrow will be hard. He stepped outside into the cooling night. Tessa Hayes listened to Jace Blackwood's footsteps fade into the distance, her heart pounding in her ears. She didn't know what the council would decide. She didn't know if the tribe's anger would turn on her. But one thing was certain, and it steadied her breath. Whatever came next, Jace Blackwood was the line between death and hope, and she was already standing on his side of it. The council fire burned low, its smoke rising in thin blue threads that carried the scent of cedars into the pre-dawn air. Tessa Hayes stood at the edge of the gathering circle, her arms folded tight against the cold morning. Fear pressed close to her ribs. The Apache warriors, wrapped in blankets or painted for battle, formed a ring around the flames. Some glared at her openly. Others avoided looking at her, altogether as if she were a bad omen wandering into their midst. Jace stood at the center of the ring, his shoulders squared, jaw set. Even in the half-light, he carried the presence of a leader, one who didn't have to earn his place, he simply possessed it. But today he looked weary in a way Tessa hadn't seen before, not from lack of sleep, but from the weight of what was about to happen. The eldest councilman, Roy Redfeather, lifted his staff. The chatter died instantly. Jace Blackwood, the old man, began. You brought a white woman into our home, a Hayes. Blood of those who have stolen our land and left our children buried in the dirt. The tribe demands to know why. Jace's gaze swept the circle, landing briefly on Tessa. Because she carries truth, he said. We must hear it. A low rumble moved through the warriors. Someone spat into the dust. Another muttered something under his breath. Roy Redfeather's voice cut through the noise. Let her speak. Tessa felt all eyes fall on her. Her throat tightened, but she pushed herself forward. She owed Jace that much. Maybe she owed herself more. My name is Tessa Hayes. She spoke, her voice steadier than she expected. I didn't come here by choice, but I'm here now because I know something that could bring you all down. A warrior stepped forward, a broad-shouldered man with a scar across his cheek. Brock Storm. Jace had called him once. He was known for his deep distrust of white settlers. Save us. Brock scoffed. Your kind always comes with promises wrapped in poison. A ripple of agreement followed. Tessa swallowed, then pressed on. My brother is planning an attack on this valley. He's working with a gunrunner. They want the gold in your canyon. Murmurs rose again, fear, anger. Gold, someone spat. Always gold. I saw the plans. Tessa continued. He wrote everything down. He tied me to a tree and left me to die because I found out. Brock's eyes flicked to her bandaged wrists, but his face stayed hard. Roy Redfeather raised his staff again. And why, girl, should we believe the words of a Hayes many here lost kin to your family's greed? Tessa's knees threatened to buckle, but she steadied herself. Then let me earn your trust. I can show you the marks in the canyon. I can show you where my brother plans to come through the ridge. I don't ask for forgiveness. I ask to help you survive. A long silence followed, heavy as a storm gathering on the horizon. At last, Eli Turner turned to Jace. You vouch for her? Jace didn't hesitate. I do. Brock Storm barked a humorless laugh. You vouch for her because she sits in your thoughts, Jace. We're not blind. Tessa felt heat rush to her face, but Jace's expression didn't flicker. This has nothing to do with thoughts, Jace said evenly. This is about truth and survival. Is it? Brock took a step closer, his voice sharp. Or is it about the way she looks at you? The way you guard her like she is already yours? A hush swept through the circle. Jace's jaw tightened. You overstep, he said. Do I? Brock snarled. You're our leader. Your heart belongs to the tribe, not some white girl brought in from the sands. Tessa felt as though she had been struck. She looked at Jace, but he wasn't looking at her. His gaze was locked on Brock's flint meeting steel. We do not choose who we shelter based on skin, Jace said. We choose based on the spirit inside. Brock's lip curled. Then you are blind. Jace Blackwood lifted his chin. So be it, but I will not cast her out. The council erupted into angry voices, some shouting in agreement with Brock Storm, others arguing for caution, a few calling for trust. The noise swelled like a dust storm. Tessa Hayes' stomach twisted. This was her fault. She had become the crack splitting through the tribe like dry earth waiting for rain. Then Roy Redfeather slammed his staff against the ground. Enough, he said, his voice sharp as a whip. This woman stays for now. She will be watched. And Jace, he added, his gaze piercing straight through the young chief. You will bear the weight of her presence. If she brings danger, your leadership will be questioned. I accept that, Jace said. Tessa felt a sharp sting in her chest at those words. He was risking everything for her, and she didn't know how to stop it. Later, the afternoon shadows stretched long across the valley. Tessa found Jace by the creek. He was crouched on a flat stone, cleaning the cut on his shoulder where Cole's bullet had grazed him. The wound was shallow, but the blood on his shirt reminded her how close she'd come to losing him the night before. You should have let me stop him, she said softly. Jace didn't look up. He would have killed you. He'll kill you too, she whispered. At that, Jace's gaze lifted, calm, dark, unreadable. I do not fear him. Tessa stepped closer. But I fear what loving someone like me will cost you. Jace froze. She hadn't meant to say it. She hadn't even known she was carrying it. But there it was, laid bare between them like an open wound. Jace rose slowly. He towered over her, but his voice was gentle. Do not speak of cost, not yet. I heard what they said, Tessa continued. I heard the anger. They think I'll bring blood to your people. Maybe they're right. Jace's voice softened. Danger will come whether you are here or not. You did not create it. You only revealed it. She shook her head. Jace, I don't want to be the reason they turn against you. He stepped closer, so close she could feel the warmth of his body, the quiet rhythm of his breath. You are not the reason. Fear is. Old wounds are. You are merely the spark that shows where the cracks lie. Her throat tightened. Then maybe I should leave. For the first time, something sharp cut across Jace's expression. Not anger, not fear, hurt. Tessa Hayes, he said quietly. Do you think I crossed miles of desert, stood before rifles, and brought you into my home only to let you walk alone into death? She swallowed. I don't want your tribe to suffer because of me. Jace stepped even closer, his voice barely above a whisper. And I do not want you to suffer for who you choose to be. The weight of his words hit her like a storm, sudden and undeniable. Their eyes locked. The wind lifted her loose hair, and somewhere behind them the village drums began a slow evening rhythm. She felt something stir inside her, soft, terrifying. Jace, what do we do now? He looked toward the jagged line of the horizon, where danger waited, just beyond the next ridge. We prepare, he said, for battle, for truth, for hard choices. Then his gaze returned to hers. And if you choose it, we prepare together. Tessa Hayes felt the meaning of his words settle deep in her bones. She was already choosing him. Her heart had done so long before her mind dared admit it. But war was coming, and the next choice she made might be the one that decided everything. The storm arrived without thunder, only dust and riders. The late afternoon light slanted across the ridges, painting the world in reds and rust. Tessa could smell trouble before she saw it. The people of the valley had been moving with quiet urgency all day. Warriors stripped arrow shafts. Women gathered children close, and elders whispered prayers into the wind. It wasn't panic, it was readiness, born of generations surviving a land that tested every bit of strength a person had. Jace stood at the mouth of the canyon, scanning the horizon, the way a hawk reads the wind. Tessa approached him, her steps, quick heart, hammering. "They're coming," she said. He nodded. "Yes. How many?" "More than I hoped, fewer than we feared." His voice had a way of making even doom sound steady. Tessa looked at the line of warriors behind him. Brock Storm among them, jaw tight, bow already strong. Even those who disliked her had accepted the need to fight. Survival outweighed resentment. "Tessa Hayes," she whispered, "if I walk out there alone, if I offer myself, they might turn back." Jace Blackwood's gaze snapped to hers. "No." "But they want me," she insisted. "Cole told the whole town I've betrayed them. If they think they're rescuing me, they'll kill you." Jace said sharply, "And then they'll kill us." "Men like your brother do not want peace," he continued. "They want victory." Tessa swallowed hard. "Then what do we do?" Jace's voice dropped low. "We let you do what you came here for." He paused, his eyes steady. "Tell the truth. All of it." Her skin chilled despite the heat. In front of both sides she asked, voice trembling. "Yes," he said, "in front of every man who aims a gun. Truth only holds power when it's spoken where lies live." Tessa drew a shaky breath. The idea of standing between two armies, one that hated her bloodline, the other that believed she'd betrayed her own, was nearly unthinkable. Nearly. But not impossible. Not with Jace standing behind her. A scout sprinted up from the southern ridge. "They're here," he shouted. "Horses 30, maybe more." Jace motioned the warriors into defensive formation. Brock Storm and 2 others climbed the rocks to oversee the valley entrance. Women hurried the small children into caves where they would be sheltered from stray bullets. Tessa's pulse hammered in her chest. She forced her legs to move, following Jace to the narrow opening where the canyon widened into the valley floor. If there was going to be a stand, it would happen here. The first rider appeared as a silhouette against the sun. Cole's horse, a chestnut mare with a braided mane. He carried himself like a man who believed the world owed him half of it. Behind him rode armed townsfolk, their faces set with grim determination. And beside Cole, slouched in an easy saddle, was Wade Thorne. Even at a distance, Tessa recognized him from whispered trail talk, tall greasy hair, a coat too fine for his trade. Somehow he had the look of a knife. Wade rode as if already measuring the land he planned to seize. Jace stepped forward, standing tall and unmarred by fear. The warriors behind him lifted their bows, ready to defend their home. Tessa moved to stand at Jace's side. Cole spotted her and jerked his reins so hard the mare reared. Tessa saw him bellow, "Get away from him!" Wade raised a hand, signaling his men to stay back. "Easy, folks," he called. "Let's have a look at the lady." Tessa stepped forward before Jace could stop her. Her voice carried through the wide canyon. "I'm not your hostage," she said. "I'm not under anyone's spell. I chose to be here." Gasps and curses rippled through the townsfolk. Cole's face twisted a storm of betrayal and fury. "You don't know what you're doing," he snarled. "You're sick in the head from what they did to you. What you did to me," Tessa corrected, lifting her bandaged wrists. "You left me to die in the desert." Murmurs broke out behind him. A few men shifted uneasily. "That's a lie," Cole snapped. "No," she said, her voice rising with a strength she didn't know she still had. "The lie is what you've told this town for years, that the Apache killed our parents." A stunned silence fell across the canyon. Wade's smile vanished. Tessa pulled the tattered ledger from her satchel and held it high. "This book holds the truth. Father and mother were killed over a land dispute by gun runners, by Wade Thorne's men." A few rifles wavered. Someone whispered, "Lord Almighty." Tessa's voice sharpened. "My brother's been manipulated, poisoned, used." Cole's eyes darted wildly between Wade, the town, then Tessa. "Don't listen to her." "She doesn't know anything," Wade interrupted softly. "Shut your mouth." It was then Cole understood what Tessa had seen far earlier. He was never Wade's partner. He was Wade's pawn. Wade, Cole said hoarsely, "Tell them she's lying." But Wade didn't speak. Instead, he lifted his rifle, aiming straight at Tessa. Jace shouted something in Apache and moved like lightning. An arrow flew from Brock Storm's bow, striking Wade's rifle and knocking his shot wide. The gun cracked, echoing off the stone. Chaos erupted. Wade's men began firing blindly. Jace grabbed Tessa, dragging her behind a boulder as bullets ricocheted off the rock. Warriors loosed arrows in swift, deadly arcs. Horses reared. Dust thickened into choking clouds. Tessa crouched, her heart screaming against her ribs. Jace shielded her with his body. Eyes narrowed, mind calculating the battlefield with cold precision. Cole stumbled from his saddle, rage and confusion twisting in him. He fired wildly, screaming her name, the truth ripping through him like shrapnel. Then Wade turned his rifle toward Cole. "Tessa Hayes," Wade Thorne muttered. "You're more trouble than you're worth." Tessa saw it happen before anyone could react. "Cole," she screamed. Jace Blackwood lunged, pulling her down as Wade fired. The gunshot cracked the air. Cole staggered backward, the bullet tearing through his chest. He dropped to his knees, eyes locked on Tessa, shocked, wounded, finally understanding. "Tessa," he choked, then fell. Wade tried to reload, but Brock Storm's second arrow found its mark, driving through Wade's shoulder and spinning him off his horse. The warriors rushed forward, overpowering the remaining gunmen as the townsfolk fled in terror. Within minutes, the gunfire died, leaving only the ragged breathing of the living and the stillness of the dead. Jace Blackwood rose slowly, helping Tessa to her feet. Her legs trembled. She stared at Cole's lifeless form, tears blurring her vision. Jace placed a steady hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "It is done," he said softly. The truth was stronger than their bullets. Tessa wiped her face, her voice barely a whisper. "Not stronger. Just louder today." Jace met her eyes, something deep and fierce in his expression. "You spoke truth at the center of two enemies," he said. "That takes more courage than any warrior I've known." Tessa felt the weight of the moment settle inside her. Death had taken its toll, but so had honesty. And in the space where lies had lived for years, something new carved its way through fragile, trembling hope. Behind them, the valley stood silent. Ahead of them, consequences waited. But Tessa Hayes knew one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever came next, she and Jace would face it standing on the same ground, the same side, the same truth. The battle left the valley in a strange kind of silence, a hollow listening quiet, as if the earth itself were waiting to see what the living would do next. Smoke drifted from the last dying fires. Horses snorted nervously, stamping dust under their hooves. Warriors moved among the bodies, separating the dead from the wounded, speaking low in their own tongue, out of respect for the fallen. Tessa stood where the canyon widened, hands trembling, dress torn and stained with smoke. Cole lay a few yards away, covered respectfully with a blanket. The sight of him stirred something painful, a tangled grief, guilt, and the faintest thread of relief that the truth was finally free. Jace approached her, slowly as though afraid she might collapse. His shoulder was wrapped in fresh cloth from Zara's tent, and streaks of dust smudged his cheekbones. "You fought with your voice," he said softly, "and the valley heard you." Tessa blinked back tears. "I wish he had heard me sooner." Jace's eyes gentled. "Some men choose blindness, others have it forced on them, but your brother saw the truth before the end. That is not nothing." She let out a shaking breath. "What happens now?" "The council meets soon," Jace said. "They'll want to decide how we move forward and what to do with you." The words hit harder than she expected, tightening something deep in her chest. She nodded though the motion felt brittle. "I'll face whatever comes." Jace studied her long and searching, as if trying to read between the cracks she was trying so hard to hold together. "You will not face it alone," he said. By midday, the town's remaining riders, those who had seen the truth in the canyon, returned under a white cloth of truth. Their faces were drawn and unsettled, burdened by the realization that they had nearly killed innocent people at the urging of a liar and a criminal. May Waverly, the town's unofficial leader, since the old sheriff died, stepped forward. She pushed back her hat, revealing streaks of gray in her hair that hadn't been there earlier that year. "We came to talk," she announced, her voice carrying clearly across the valley. Jace stepped out to meet her. Brock Storm and several warriors, bristled bows half raised, but Jace motioned for them to stand down. May looked at Tessa, really looked, and something in her expression softened with shame. "You saved lives today," May said quietly. "Not just Apache lives." Tessa swallowed. The truth needed to be spoken. May nodded. "And you paid a price for speaking it. I'm sorry for what your brother did to you, and I'm sorry for following his foolishness." Behind her, several townsfolk murmured agreement heads, bowed in regret. Jace crossed his arms over his chest. "Will your people come again with guns?" May shook her head. "No, not ever again. We'll leave Apache land alone. You have my word." Brock Storm stepped forward, words breaking the silence. May held his gaze unflinching, then let her actions prove the truth. After a long moment, Jace nodded. "We accept your peace." A collective exhale passed through both sides, tall, tentative, but real. May placed a hand on Tessa's shoulder. "You're welcome in town any time. You deserve a home among your own people." Tessa looked at Jace before answering. "Thank you, but my place isn't what it used to be." May Waverly's eyes flickered thoughtfully. Then she nodded once more and led her people away. That evening, under a sky washed clean by the sunset, the Apache Council gathered. Torches flickered around the circle, casting long shadows across the ground. Jace Blackwood stood before them, strong and steady, though Tessa Hayes could see the tension in every line of his body. The question of her fate hung in the air like a breath waiting to be released. Roy Redfeather was the first to speak. "This woman risked her life for us," he said. She spoke truth when the light circled her. Zara stepped forward next. "She carries a heart not shaped by her brother's sins. And she protected our chief when death rode in." Brock Storm crossed his arms, but his voice was steady. "Her presence still divides the village." Tessa's stomach dropped at the weight of the words. Jace Blackwood's voice cut through the tension. Division existed long before she came. Her truth only revealed what was already cracked beneath us. He turned to Tessa, then back to the council. "I would have her stay, not as an enemy, not as a danger, but as one who fought beside us." The elders murmured, the fire popping as they listened. Tessa closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the moment. Finally, Roy Redfeather lifted his staff. "Tessa Hayes," he said, his voice carrying over the quiet. You may remain with our people if that is what you choose." Her knees nearly buckled. She drew a breath that tasted of cedar smoke and relief. "I choose to stay," she whispered. Jace Blackwood didn't smile, but something warm flickered in his eyes. Something that Tessa felt all the way to her bones. Later that night, Jace led her up a rocky path overlooking the valley. At the summit stood an ancient juniper tree, its twisted branches stretching toward the stars. Beneath it lay stones arranged in a ring as old as memory, as sacred as breath. "This place," Jace said quietly, "is where our people speak to the ancestors." The wind whispered through the branches. Tessa Hayes felt the weight of the land settle around her, grounding her, welcoming her. Jace removed a small woven band of red and black beads from his wrist. "This represents protection," he said, "and choice." She watched as he placed it gently into her palm. Her heart thudded steady and sure. In return, Tessa Hayes tore a thin strip from the hem of her dress, white, simple, honest. She tied it to a low branch where it fluttered in the evening breeze. Jace touched the fabric lightly. A promise to live in truth," she said. "With you, if you'll have me." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating through him in the cooling air. "I chose you the moment I cut your ropes," he said. The rest was only time catching up. Her breath caught in her chest. The land around them fell away. In the quiet, in the dark, in the cradle of an ancient people's blessing, they leaned into each other. No fear, no hesitation, just the soft recognition of two hearts that had weathered storms to arrive at the same place. Below them, the valley lights flickered like fireflies. Above them, the stars blinked into existence, one by one. Tessa Hayes rested her head against Jace Blackwood's chest. 13 years of lies had shaped her life. One truth had saved it. And as Jace's arms came around her, winding her to the land and the future she had chosen, Tessa Hayes knew something with absolute clarity. Love, wild, honest, hard-won, was the only treasure worth fighting for in the great American West. And she had finally found hers.